Welcome to this channel. Today, we embark on a deep dive into the extraordinary history of one of Africa's greatest civilizations, the Great Zimbabwe. From its awe-inspiring architecture to its complex trade networks and profound cultural legacy, this kingdom left an indelible mark on history. This 2-hour journey will uncover the rise, peak, and eventual decline of Great Zimbabwe, examining its environmental, political, and economic factors, while also revealing how its legacy continues to shape African and global identity today. As you listen, prepare to discover not just a civilization, but a symbol of Africa's untold resilience and ingenuity. So, sit back, relax, and let's uncover the history of Great Zimbabwe, one of the most magnificent African empires that shaped the course of history. The importance of Great Zimbabwe in this historiographical shift cannot be overstated. As one of the most iconic African civilizations, its history has become a cornerstone for scholars who seek to highlight Africa's rich cultural heritage and intellectual achievements. The study of Great Zimbabwe, alongside other African civilizations, has helped to place Africa at the center of world history rather than relegating it to the margins. African historians are now reclaiming the narrative of their own past, ensuring that the continent's history is no longer defined by the colonial experience. In addition to its role in African historiography, Great Zimbabwe has become an integral part of global education and cultural awareness. As a UNESCO World Heritage Site, it has garnered international attention, attracting tourists, researchers, and scholars from around the world. The educational value of Great Zimbabwe goes beyond its architectural and archaeological significance. It is also a key resource for understanding African history, pre-colonial political systems, and the long-standing traditions of trade and cultural exchange in sub-Saharan Africa. Educational institutions, both in Africa and globally, have incorporated the history of Great Zimbabwe into their curricula. The ruins and their historical context provide valuable material for studies in archaeology, anthropology, art history, and African studies. Students studying African history are introduced to Great Zimbabwe as an essential case study in the development of early African civilizations. By learning about the kingdom's sophisticated political systems, trade networks, and architectural feats, students gain a deeper understanding of the complexity and diversity of African societies before European colonization. The global recognition of Great Zimbabwe also contributes to the growing movement of cultural heritage preservation. As more people from around the world visit the site, there is a greater appreciation for the importance of protecting and conserving Africa's historical landmarks. Great Zimbabwe's inclusion in global discussions about cultural heritage preservation highlights the broader importance of safeguarding Africa's historical sites, not just for academic research, but for the enrichment of global cultural diversity. Moreover, the influence of Great Zimbabwe extends beyond the classroom into the realm of public history. Museums, exhibitions, and documentaries have helped to spread the knowledge of Great Zimbabwe's history to wider audiences. By engaging with the public, these initiatives foster a deeper understanding of the kingdom's legacy and its impact on the world. These efforts also challenge the stereotypes and misrepresentations of African history that continue to persist in some quarters of the global media. As more people learn about Great Zimbabwe and its significance, the history of the kingdom continues to inspire people worldwide. Its cultural, architectural, and historical achievements serve as a reminder of Africa's intellectual and creative capacity, offering valuable lessons for modern societies. Great Zimbabwe stands as a beacon of African ingenuity and resilience, reminding the world of the continent's rich contributions to human history. Oral tradition plays a vital role in understanding the history of Great Zimbabwe. While much of what we know about the kingdom is based on archaeological findings, oral traditions passed down through generations have provided crucial insights into the cultural, political, and social life of the civilization. In African cultures, oral tradition has been an essential means of preserving history, passing down knowledge, and maintaining continuity between generations. In the case of Great Zimbabwe, these oral accounts offer valuable context for the stone ruins and artifacts uncovered by archaeologists. The Shona people, who are believed to be the descendants of the builders of Great Zimbabwe, have preserved many stories and legends about their ancestors and the kingdom. These oral traditions often focus on the role of the Mambo, the divine ruler of Great Zimbabwe, and the spiritual significance of the kingdom's monuments. The Mambo was seen as a spiritual leader who had the power to communicate with the gods and mediate between the spiritual and temporal worlds. The connection between the Mambo and the gods was central to the political order and the legitimacy of the ruling class. The Shona people also have oral traditions that speak of the kingdom's rise to power, its vast trade networks, and the eventual decline of Great Zimbabwe. These stories are often woven into the fabric of Shona culture, passed down through generations of elders, and are used to teach younger members of the community about their heritage and history. While some of these stories have been mythologized over time, they offer valuable cultural insights into the values, beliefs, and worldview of the people of Great Zimbabwe. In addition to the Shona people, other ethnic groups in southern Africa also have oral traditions that reference Great Zimbabwe. These accounts are important because they provide additional perspectives on the kingdom's influence on neighboring societies. Oral history is often used to complement the archaeological record, helping historians piece together a more comprehensive picture of the past. However, it is important to approach oral traditions with caution, as they can sometimes be shaped by cultural memory, personal experience, and the passage of time. While oral traditions are an invaluable tool for understanding the history of Great Zimbabwe, they must be interpreted carefully and in conjunction with other sources of evidence. Archaeology, written records, and comparative studies of other African civilizations help to provide a more balanced and accurate understanding of the kingdom's history. Archaeology has been instrumental in uncovering the history of Great Zimbabwe. Excavations at the site have revealed important details about the kingdom's social organization, economy, and architectural achievements. The stone structures, such as the Great Enclosure and the Hill Complex, are the most visible remnants of the kingdom. But archaeological digs have also uncovered pottery, tools, beads, and other artifacts that shed light on the everyday lives of the people of Great Zimbabwe. One of the most important discoveries made by archaeologists was the realization that Great Zimbabwe's builders were not external forces or foreign invaders, as had been suggested by some earlier theories, but rather the indigenous Shona people. Gertrude Cotton Thompson, a British archaeologist who excavated the site in the 1920s, played a key role in confirming the African origins of Great Zimbabwe. Her work helped to dispel the notion that the kingdom was built by Phoenicians or other non-African groups and firmly established its place as a significant African civilization. Archaeological excavations have revealed much about the kingdom's economy. The discovery of pottery and beads, as well as evidence of gold smelting, suggests that Great Zimbabwe was a thriving center of trade and craftsmanship. The kingdom was strategically located along trade routes that connected the interior of Africa to the Indian Ocean, allowing it to engage in commerce with Arab, Indian, and Persian merchants. This exchange of goods, including gold, ivory, and textiles, played a crucial role in the prosperity of the kingdom. The excavation of residential areas within the ruins of Great Zimbabwe has also provided valuable information about the daily lives of the kingdom's inhabitants. Archaeologists have uncovered the remains of houses, tools, and food storage facilities, offering insights into the domestic lives of the people. The distribution of artifacts across the site suggests that Great Zimbabwe had a complex social structure, with a clear distinction between the elite ruling class and the common people. The elite lived in the Great Enclosure and other monumental structures, while the common people resided in smaller dwellings outside the main royal complex. In addition to these domestic finds, archaeologists have also uncovered evidence of ritual practices that were central to the religious life of Great Zimbabwe. Excavations have revealed altars, carved stone objects, and other religious artifacts, suggesting that the people of Great Zimbabwe had a complex spiritual belief system. The role of religion in legitimizing the power of the Mambo, as well as the kingdom's relationship with the gods and ancestors, is a theme that runs throughout the archaeological record. Archaeology, in combination with oral history, written records, and comparative studies, has allowed historians to piece together a more complete picture of Great Zimbabwe's history. By examining the site through an interdisciplinary lens, archaeologists and historians have been able to reconstruct the kingdom's political, social, and economic structures, providing valuable insights into one of Africa's most powerful and influential civilizations. While the study of Great Zimbabwe has yielded invaluable insights into the history of the kingdom, it has also been fraught with challenges and controversies. From its initial discovery in the 19th century to the present day, the history of Great Zimbabwe has been the subject of intense debate and dispute. These controversies often revolve around the interpretation of the site's significance, the identity of its builders, and the reasons for its decline. One of the most significant controversies surrounding Great Zimbabwe's history was the debate over its origins. For many years, European scholars and explorers, including the British adventurer Karl Mach, insisted that the ruins could not have been built by indigenous Africans and instead attributed their construction to foreign groups such as the Phoenicians or ancient Egyptians. This theory, which was based on racist assumptions about the intellectual and cultural abilities of Africans, persisted for decades despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. The work of archaeologists like Gertrude Cotton Thompson, who proved that the site was built by the Shona people, helped to dispel these myths and establish Great Zimbabwe as an African achievement. Another ongoing controversy in the study of Great Zimbabwe is the question of why the kingdom declined. Scholars have proposed various theories to explain the collapse of the kingdom, including environmental factors such as deforestation and soil degradation, as well as political and economic instability. Some historians argue that the kingdom's reliance on gold as its primary economic resource made it vulnerable to shifts in trade routes and external pressures. Others point to the rise of neighboring kingdoms, such as Matapa, as a factor in Great Zimbabwe's decline. The truth is likely a combination of these factors, and the exact reasons for the kingdom's collapse remain a subject of ongoing research and debate. Additionally, the process of excavating and preserving the ruins of Great Zimbabwe has raised ethical questions. As the site became more widely recognized as a national treasure and a symbol of African identity, there have been debates over the role of foreign scholars and institutions in conducting research and managing the site. Zimbabweans have increasingly called for the repatriation of artifacts and greater involvement in the research and preservation of their cultural heritage. The role of colonialism in the historical study of Great Zimbabwe, as well as the ongoing challenges of preserving the site in the face of environmental threats and tourism, continues to be a source of tension. Despite these challenges, the study of Great Zimbabwe has provided invaluable contributions to our understanding of African history and culture. It serves as a reminder of the importance of preserving and respecting Africa's cultural heritage, as well as the need to correct historical misrepresentations and ensure that African voices are heard in the telling of their own stories. Great Zimbabwe stands as one of Africa's most powerful symbols of resilience, ingenuity, and cultural achievement. As a monumental reminder of pre-colonial African greatness, it offers a profound challenge to the long-held Eurocentric narratives that have historically sought to diminish or dismiss the achievements of African civilizations. The rise and fall of Great Zimbabwe reflect the broader arc of African history, where periods of flourishing were followed by challenges that tested the strength and adaptability of African societies. Its remarkable stone ruins, still standing after centuries, serve as a testament to the kingdom's ability to thrive despite the challenges it faced. The history of Great Zimbabwe demonstrates how African civilizations were capable of complex governance systems, advanced engineering, and vibrant trade networks that span continents. The kingdom's ability to flourish without significant foreign influence or external intervention is a powerful reminder of Africa's historical self-sufficiency and autonomy. By mastering agriculture, metalworking, and trade, the people of Great Zimbabwe were able to create a sustainable society that contributed to the broader history of humanity. The resilience of Great Zimbabwe is particularly poignant when considered in the context of colonialism. After the decline of the kingdom in the 15th century, European colonial powers sought to erase or misinterpret African history to justify their dominance. The fall of Great Zimbabwe in particular was mischaracterized by colonial scholars as evidence of African instability and incompetence. However, as post-colonial scholarship and the rediscovery of indigenous African traditions have shown, the kingdom's fall was due to a complex set of environmental, political, and economic factors, not inherent weakness or inferiority. Great Zimbabwe's ability to endure for centuries, despite these challenges, highlights the strength and perseverance of its people. In modern Zimbabwe, the ruins of Great Zimbabwe serve as a powerful symbol of national pride and resistance. The site has become a focal point for the country's identity, used by the government to highlight the rich cultural heritage that existed long before colonialism. The historical significance of Great Zimbabwe is embodied in the national flag, currency, and other symbols of independence, reinforcing the message that Zimbabwe's heritage is rooted in a proud and resilient past. This link to the country's pre-colonial history has also become an integral part of the country's political discourse, particularly as a way to affirm African identity and resist colonial legacies. Great Zimbabwe's legacy of resilience is not only important for Zimbabweans, but also for Africans and the global community at large. It serves as a reminder of the continent's long and diverse history of civilization, challenging stereotypes that have often sought to depict Africa as a place without organized societies, culture, or governance before colonialism. The ruins of Great Zimbabwe remind us that Africa was home to sophisticated civilizations that played significant roles in shaping the world. One of the most enduring legacies of Great Zimbabwe is its architectural achievements, which have had a lasting impact on the development of architecture in Africa. The kingdom's most famous structures, the Great Enclosure and the Hill Complex, are masterpieces of dry stone construction, showcasing the advanced engineering skills of the builders. The construction techniques used to create these monumental structures without the use of mortar remain a source of admiration and inspiration for architects and engineers. The Great Enclosure, with its massive stone walls and conical towers, is the largest ancient structure in sub-Saharan Africa and one of the most impressive architectural feats in the world. The walls of the Great Enclosure, built without mortar, were carefully crafted using precisely cut stones that fit together seamlessly, demonstrating the skill and precision of the builders. These walls were not only functional, but also symbolic, serving as a representation of the kingdom's power and wealth. The conical towers, which are unique to Great Zimbabwe's architecture, may have had a symbolic or religious function, signifying the connection between the earthly and spiritual realms. The Hill Complex, located on a hilltop, is another architectural marvel. It was likely used as a royal residence or a ceremonial site, and it is believed to have been the center of the kingdom's political and religious life. The hill complex was constructed using similar dry stone techniques, with carefully placed stone blocks forming walls and platforms. The positioning of the hill complex at the top of a hill gave it strategic importance, both for its symbolic connection to the gods and for its defensive advantage. The complex was designed to impress and communicate the power of the Mambo, the divine ruler of Great Zimbabwe. The architectural achievements of Great Zimbabwe were not isolated to the kingdom itself. They influenced the architectural styles of neighboring regions and subsequent civilizations. The use of dry stone construction, the focus on monumental structures, and the incorporation of symbolic elements into the design of buildings became features of other African societies. The influence of Great Zimbabwe's architecture can be seen in later kingdoms such as Matapa, where similar construction techniques were used in royal residences and religious sites. Beyond Africa, the architectural legacy of Great Zimbabwe has inspired interest in the field of global architecture. The techniques used in constructing the dry stone structures at Great Zimbabwe have been studied by architects and engineers around the world, who admire the sophistication and durability of the buildings. The use of dry stone construction without mortar was not only an innovative engineering feat, but also a solution to the challenges posed by the region's climate and terrain. These structures have stood the test of time and continue to inspire architects who seek to understand sustainable building techniques that do not rely on modern materials like cement and mortar. The architectural legacy of Great Zimbabwe serves as a reminder that African civilizations had their own unique approaches to construction and design, often driven by practical needs and spiritual beliefs. The stone walls, towers, and platforms of Great Zimbabwe are lasting symbols of the ingenuity and creativity of the kingdom's builders, and they continue to inspire admiration and respect in the world of architecture. The history of Great Zimbabwe is deeply intertwined with the trade networks that connected the kingdom to other regions of Africa, the Indian Ocean world, and beyond. The kingdom's participation in these global trade routes was a key factor in its rise to power and prosperity. As a central hub in the African trade network, Great Zimbabwe was able to access valuable resources such as gold, ivory, and copper, which it traded with merchants from distant lands. These trade networks also brought luxury goods, including textiles, ceramics, and beads, to Great Zimbabwe, enriching the lives of its elite and contributing to the cultural development of the kingdom. Great Zimbabwe's most significant export was gold, which was highly prized by traders from the Arabian Peninsula, India, and China. The kingdom's gold mines, particularly those located along the Limpopo River and in the Zambezi Valley, were among the richest in the region. Gold from Great Zimbabwe was traded along well-established routes that linked the kingdom to coastal city-states like Kilwa and Mombasa, as well as to the Indian Ocean world. These trade routes facilitated the exchange of goods and ideas between Africa, Asia, and the Middle East, creating a dynamic cultural and economic environment that helped sustain the kingdom's wealth and power. In addition to gold, Great Zimbabwe also exported ivory, which was in high demand in international markets. The kingdom's access to vast elephant populations, especially along the Zambezi River, allowed it to provide this valuable commodity to merchants along the coast. Ivory was used to create intricate carvings, jewelry, and other decorative items, which were highly prized in both African and international markets. Great Zimbabwe's strategic location allowed it to engage in a vast network of trade, connecting the interior of Africa to the coastal trading cities that acted as intermediaries in the Indian Ocean trade. The kingdom's wealth was further boosted by its control over copper and other local resources. The exchange of goods between Great Zimbabwe and the Swahili city-states along the East African coast helped to sustain a thriving trade economy that made the kingdom a key player in the African and global economic landscape. Through trade, Great Zimbabwe was able to acquire goods and knowledge from distant lands, which in turn contributed to the kingdom's cultural and technological development. The influence of Arab and Persian traders, as well as the adoption of foreign architectural and artistic styles, helped shape the cultural identity of Great Zimbabwe. The kingdom's participation in the Indian Ocean trade also facilitated the exchange of ideas, leading to the incorporation of new technologies, religious practices, and artistic traditions into the kingdom's society. The global significance of Great Zimbabwe's trade networks cannot be overstated. The kingdom's economic prosperity was based on its ability to connect to broader global trade systems, which allowed it to thrive for centuries. This connection to international trade also helped to elevate Great Zimbabwe as a powerful and influential civilization, placing it at the crossroads of Africa's ancient commercial networks. The decline of Great Zimbabwe remains a topic of scholarly debate, with a range of factors, both environmental and socio-political, contributing to the eventual fall of this once thriving kingdom. One of the most significant environmental factors that impacted the kingdom was deforestation. As Great Zimbabwe expanded its population and influence, the demand for timber, both for construction and fuel, increased substantially. The kingdom's inhabitants relied on wood for building the massive stone enclosures, structures, and other architectural features that became a hallmark of Great Zimbabwe's impressive infrastructure. This deforestation led to soil erosion, as the trees that once held the soil in place were cleared for building purposes or to provide wood for cooking and heating. Without these trees, the soil became increasingly vulnerable to erosion, particularly during the rainy season. This degradation of the land led to the depletion of fertile soil, which significantly impacted the agricultural output of the kingdom. Great Zimbabwe, which had once been able to sustain large populations through its agricultural practices, began to face food shortages as the land became less productive. The loss of fertile land not only affected the agricultural base of Great Zimbabwe, but also had wider economic implications. The kingdom's economy had relied heavily on the production of crops such as millet and sorghum, which were used to feed its population. As the soil quality deteriorated, it became more difficult to maintain a stable food supply, and this contributed to the weakening of the kingdom's economic power. The lack of sufficient agricultural output further strained the kingdom's social systems, as the elite were no longer able to maintain the level of luxury and prestige they once enjoyed. In addition to deforestation, Great Zimbabwe also experienced periods of drought and changing climatic conditions, which further exacerbated the kingdom's environmental challenges. Evidence suggests that during the 14th and 15th centuries, the region experienced fluctuations in rainfall, which may have disrupted the kingdom's agricultural cycle. These periods of drought, combined with the environmental degradation caused by deforestation, created a perfect storm of ecological pressures that made it increasingly difficult for Great Zimbabwe to sustain its population and economy. The environmental challenges faced by Great Zimbabwe serve as a cautionary tale about the consequences of overexploiting natural resources. While the kingdom's inhabitants were initially able to thrive due to their effective agricultural practices and resource management, the inability to adapt to changing environmental conditions led to the eventual decline of the kingdom. The environmental factors that contributed to the fall of Great Zimbabwe underscore the importance of sustainable land management and the need to balance human development with the preservation of natural resources. While environmental factors played a significant role in the decline of Great Zimbabwe, social and political factors also contributed to the kingdom's fall. One of the key social dynamics that impacted the kingdom was the increasing stratification of society. As Great Zimbabwe grew in wealth and power, the gap between the elite and the common people widened. The elite class, composed of the Mambo and his court, enjoyed immense wealth and luxury, while the majority of the population worked as farmers, laborers, or artisans. This growing social inequality led to tensions within the kingdom. The elite were able to maintain their power and privileges through control over trade and resources, but this created resentment among the common people, who faced hardships due to the declining agricultural output and rising food scarcity. The dissatisfaction among the lower classes may have contributed to internal unrest and weakened the social cohesion that had once sustained the kingdom. Politically, Great Zimbabwe's centralized system of governance became increasingly difficult to maintain as the kingdom expanded. The Mambo, who held both spiritual and temporal authority, faced growing challenges in maintaining control over the vast territory and diverse population. The environmental challenges faced by Great Zimbabwe serve as a cautionary tale about the consequences of overexploiting natural resources. While the kingdom's inhabitants were initially able to thrive due to their effective agricultural practices and resource management, the inability to adapt to changing environmental conditions led to the eventual decline of the kingdom. The environmental factors that contributed to the fall of Great Zimbabwe underscore the importance of sustainable land management and the need to balance human development with the preservation of natural resources. While environmental factors played a significant role in the decline of Great Zimbabwe, social and political factors also contributed to the kingdom's fall. One of the key social dynamics that impacted the kingdom was the increasing stratification of society. As Great Zimbabwe grew in wealth and power, the gap between the elite and the common people widened. The elite class, composed of the Mambo and his court, enjoyed immense wealth and luxury, while the majority of the population worked as farmers, laborers, or artisans. This growing social inequality led to tensions within the kingdom. The elite were able to maintain their power and privileges through control over trade and resources, but this created resentment among the common people, who faced hardships due to the declining agricultural output and rising food scarcity. The dissatisfaction among the lower classes may have contributed to internal unrest and weakened the social cohesion that had once sustained the kingdom. Politically, Great Zimbabwe's centralized system of governance became increasingly difficult to maintain as the kingdom expanded. The Mambo, who held both spiritual and temporal authority, faced growing challenges in maintaining control over the vast territory and diverse population. Regional leaders, who had previously been loyal to the Mambo, began to assert greater autonomy, leading to a more fragmented political landscape. This decentralization of power undermined the Mambo's ability to effectively govern and address the kingdom's mounting challenges. The rise of competing political entities in the region also weakened Great Zimbabwe's political power. The Kingdom of Matapa, located to the north, began to challenge Great Zimbabwe's dominance in the 15th century. The Matapa Kingdom, with its access to gold mines and control over key trade routes, gradually supplanted Great Zimbabwe as the leading power in the region. The political rivalry between the two kingdoms further eroded Great Zimbabwe's authority and contributed to its decline. The internal political fragmentation, combined with the rise of external competitors, made it difficult for Great Zimbabwe to maintain its influence in the region. The lack of effective leadership and the weakening of centralized authority hastened the kingdom's downfall, as its rulers were no longer able to protect the kingdom's interests or sustain its former grandeur. Another critical factor in the decline of Great Zimbabwe was the collapse of its trade networks. At the height of its power, Great Zimbabwe was a central hub in the Indian Ocean trade network, engaging in the exchange of gold, ivory, and copper with merchants from Arabia, India, and China. The kingdom's wealth was largely derived from its control over the gold trade, and its strategic location allowed it to tap into the lucrative markets of the Swahili coast. However, as the kingdom's political and economic stability weakened, so too did its role in the regional and global trade networks. The rise of the Kingdom of Matapa, which gained control over the gold-producing regions to the north of Great Zimbabwe, disrupted the kingdom's trade routes. Matapa's access to the gold mines, coupled with its alliances with Portuguese traders, allowed it to assert dominance over the region's trade networks, leaving Great Zimbabwe marginalized. The disruption of trade routes had a profound impact on Great Zimbabwe's economy. The kingdom had become heavily reliant on the wealth generated by gold and ivory, and the loss of access to these resources weakened the kingdom's economic base. The decline in trade also reduced the flow of luxury goods into the kingdom, diminishing the wealth and status of the elite. The economic disintegration of Great Zimbabwe was further exacerbated by the declining agricultural output, as the kingdom's once thriving agricultural economy faltered due to environmental degradation. The loss of economic power was accompanied by a decline in the kingdom's cultural and artistic production. Great Zimbabwe had been known for its intricate pottery, beadwork, and stone sculptures, but as the economy collapsed, these artistic traditions began to wane. The cultural vibrancy that had once characterized the kingdom gave way to a more pragmatic and survival-oriented society, focused on maintaining basic subsistence rather than producing luxury items. By the time the Portuguese arrived in the region in the late 15th century, Great Zimbabwe had already entered a period of decline. The disruption of trade, combined with the environmental and political challenges, had left the kingdom vulnerable to external pressures. The Portuguese, who sought to control the gold trade and expand their influence in East Africa, established relations with the Swahili city-states and later with the Matapa kingdom. This shift in the balance of power in the region further contributed to the weakening of Great Zimbabwe, which eventually fell into obscurity. The history of Great Zimbabwe is not only told through the ruins left behind, but also through the critical archaeological work that has been conducted at the site. Matapa's access to the gold mines, coupled with its alliances with Portuguese traders, allowed it to assert dominance over the region's trade networks, leaving Great Zimbabwe marginalized. The disruption of trade routes had a profound impact on Great Zimbabwe's economy. The kingdom had become heavily reliant on the wealth generated by gold and ivory, and the loss of access to these resources weakened the kingdom's economic base. The decline in trade also reduced the flow of luxury goods into the kingdom, diminishing the wealth and status of the elite. The economic disintegration of Great Zimbabwe was further exacerbated by the declining agricultural output, as the kingdom's once thriving agricultural economy faltered due to environmental degradation. The loss of economic power was accompanied by a decline in the kingdom's cultural and artistic production. Great Zimbabwe had been known for its intricate pottery, beadwork, and stone sculptures, but as the economy collapsed, these artistic traditions began to wane. The cultural vibrancy that had once characterized the kingdom gave way to a more pragmatic and survival-oriented society, focused on maintaining basic subsistence rather than producing luxury items. By the time the Portuguese arrived in the region in the late 15th century, Great Zimbabwe had already entered a period of decline. The disruption of trade, combined with the environmental and political challenges, had left the kingdom vulnerable to external pressures. The Portuguese, who sought to control the gold trade and expand their influence in East Africa, established relations with the Swahili city-states and later with the Matapa kingdom. This shift in the balance of power in the region further contributed to the weakening of Great Zimbabwe, which eventually fell into obscurity. The history of Great Zimbabwe is not only told through the ruins left behind, but also through the critical archaeological work that has been conducted at the site. The first major excavation of the ruins occurred in the late 19th century, beginning with the European explorer and treasure hunter Karl Mach in 1871. Mach, upon discovering the ruins, was quick to attribute them to foreign civilizations such as the Phoenicians or even the Queen of Sheba, largely because of his inability to accept that indigenous Africans could have constructed such monumental stone structures. Mach's theories, although widely dismissed today, set the stage for further exploration of the site. However, it wasn't until the 1920s that serious archaeological excavations began under the direction of Gertrude Cotton-Thompson, a British archaeologist whose work is often credited with changing the understanding of Great Zimbabwe. Cotton-Thompson's excavations and the subsequent analysis of the artifacts revealed the site's true origins. It was built by the indigenous Shona people, and its construction was tied to their political, economic, and spiritual life. Cotton-Thompson's work was instrumental in debunking the myth that Great Zimbabwe was the product of foreign builders, as she conclusively demonstrated that the site was an African achievement. She also pointed out that the construction techniques used in Great Zimbabwe were consistent with those of other African societies. This realization was groundbreaking, as it challenged prevailing racist ideas that African societies were incapable of such sophisticated engineering feats. Cotton-Thompson's excavations uncovered many key elements of the site, including pottery shards, animal bones, and fragments of carved stones, all of which helped to shed light on the daily life and rituals of the people of Great Zimbabwe. Additionally, the discovery of the famous Zimbabwe birds, carved from soapstone, offered important insights into the kingdom's religious and symbolic practices. These discoveries were not only critical in establishing the African origins of Great Zimbabwe, but also helped to build a more nuanced understanding of the social, political, and cultural practices that once defined the kingdom. In the years following Cotton-Thompson's excavations, further archaeological work has continued at Great Zimbabwe, with excavations focusing on the hill complex, the Great Enclosure, and the other surrounding structures. These investigations have revealed even more about the kingdom's architectural sophistication, including its use of dry stone masonry, which was employed without the use of mortar, an impressive feat given the size and complexity of structures. Today, the archaeological work at Great Zimbabwe continues to provide valuable information about the kingdom. New technologies, such as ground-penetrating radar and more precise dating techniques, have enabled archaeologists to further refine their understanding of the site and its history. These modern efforts, building on the foundational work of early archaeologists like Cotton-Thompson, continue to offer vital insights into one of Africa's most significant ancient civilizations. One of the most significant aspects of Great Zimbabwe's prosperity was its role in the regional and global trade networks, and archaeological findings have been essential in understanding the scale and scope of these trade connections. Great Zimbabwe's location, strategically situated near the Zambezi River and on key trade routes, allowed it to act as a vital link between the interior of Africa and the Swahili city-states on the East African coast, as well as the broader Indian Ocean world. Archaeological evidence from the site indicates that Great Zimbabwe was a thriving commercial center, with trade in gold, ivory, and other resources being central to its wealth. Excavations at Great Zimbabwe have uncovered evidence of the kingdom's participation in these trade networks, revealing artifacts from distant lands. Pottery shards, beads, and imported goods, such as Chinese porcelain, Indian textiles, and Arabian pottery have been found at the site, showing that the kingdom was deeply connected to the global trade system of the time. The presence of these foreign items is clear evidence of Great Zimbabwe's involvement in the Indian Ocean trade routes, which connected Africa to Asia, the Middle East, and beyond. The discovery of gold-working tools and the remnants of gold smelting furnaces provides additional evidence of the kingdom's significant role in the gold trade. Great Zimbabwe's gold mines were among the richest in the region, and gold was one of the kingdom's primary exports. The kingdom's ability to control gold production and trade helped it to build its wealth and influence. The gold was traded through the Swahili coast in exchange for luxury goods and other commodities that were highly prized in Great Zimbabwe, such as beads, textiles, and ceramics. The extensive trade in gold and ivory also provided Great Zimbabwe with access to the resources necessary to maintain its elite class and the monumental stone architecture that characterized its cityscape. In addition to the material goods found at the site, the archaeological record also reveals the social and political dynamics that shaped Great Zimbabwe's trade networks. The organization of trade was likely overseen by the Mambo, the divine ruler of the kingdom, who controlled both the political and religious aspects of life in Great Zimbabwe. The Mambo's role in managing trade relations with other kingdoms and societies would have been essential for maintaining the kingdom's wealth and ensuring its continued prosperity. The evidence of trade at Great Zimbabwe underscores the kingdom's position as a regional economic powerhouse and highlights its central role in connecting Africa to the broader world. The archaeological record from the site provides valuable insight into the kingdom's trade networks and its place within the larger context of global trade systems in the medieval period. The decline and eventual abandonment of Great Zimbabwe remain subjects of considerable debate among historians and archaeologists. The kingdom, which had thrived for several centuries, began to experience significant social, political, and economic challenges in the late 14th and early 15th centuries. The reasons for its decline are complex and multifaceted, but archaeological evidence has shed light on some of the contributing factors. Environmental degradation, particularly deforestation and soil erosion, is widely believed to have played a significant role in the kingdom's downfall. As discussed earlier, the clearing of trees for construction and fuel, coupled with the overuse of land for agriculture, led to a depletion of natural resources. The loss of forests resulted in soil erosion, which made farming more difficult and led to a decline in agricultural productivity. The environmental stress created by these factors would have placed significant pressure on the kingdom's ability to sustain its population, leading to food shortages and economic instability. Archaeological evidence also suggests that the social structure of Great Zimbabwe began to fracture as political authority became more decentralized. The Mambo, who had once wielded considerable power, may have faced increasing challenges to their authority from regional leaders or rival factions. The growing discontent among the kingdom's population, exacerbated by the lack of food and resources, may have contributed to internal unrest and a weakening of the political system. The decline of the kingdom's trade networks is another factor that likely contributed to its collapse. The rise of the Matapa kingdom to the north, which gained control over the gold-producing regions, undermined Great Zimbabwe's position as a central trading power. Additionally, shifts in trade routes and the growing influence of Portuguese traders along the East African coast in the 15th century may have disrupted Great Zimbabwe's once thriving commerce. The decline in trade revenues, combined with the loss of access to gold and other key resources, would have weakened the kingdom's economy and further destabilized the region. By the time the Portuguese arrived in the late 15th century, Great Zimbabwe had already entered a period of decline, and the once thriving city was gradually abandoned. The exact reasons for the abandonment remain unclear, but the combination of environmental, political, and economic pressures likely led to the kingdom's eventual collapse. Despite its decline, Great Zimbabwe's ruins continue to stand as a testament to the kingdom's once mighty power and its place in the history of Africa. The ruins of Great Zimbabwe stand as an enduring symbol of Africa's rich history, cultural heritage, and resilience. For modern Zimbabweans, the site has become a central figure in national identity, representing a link to their pre-colonial past, long before the arrival of European colonization. The significance of the Great Zimbabwe ruins transcends the borders of Zimbabwe itself, as it has become a symbol of African pride across the continent and in the African diaspora. After gaining independence in 1980, Zimbabwe adopted the imagery of Great Zimbabwe as a symbol of resistance against colonial oppression and as a declaration of the nation's ability to carve out its own history. The Zimbabwe bird, a sculptural object discovered at the site, has been prominently featured on the national flag and currency, linking the country's modern political identity to its ancient roots. This powerful symbol emphasizes the continuity of African civilization from ancient times to the present, allowing Zimbabweans to reconnect with their cultural legacy. The recognition of Great Zimbabwe as a powerful, independent civilization also helped shape broader African identity. In the post-colonial era, African nations increasingly began to reclaim their cultural and historical heritage from the narrative imposed by colonial powers. European colonialists had long sought to undermine African achievements, portraying the continent as devoid of advanced societies and rich cultural traditions. The rediscovery of Great Zimbabwe and its eventual recognition as a major center of African civilization challenged this distorted view of Africa's past. It proved that African societies had developed complex political, social, and economic systems, with Great Zimbabwe being a shining example of such sophistication. Moreover, Great Zimbabwe has come to symbolize the resilience of African societies in the face of external pressures, from colonization to modern-day challenges. Its monumental stone ruins have stood the test of time, reminding contemporary African societies of the strength and ingenuity of their ancestors. The resilience displayed by Great Zimbabwe in enduring environmental, political, and economic challenges serves as a metaphor for the resilience of modern African nations in the struggle for self-determination, identity, and cultural pride. The revival of interest in Great Zimbabwe has also contributed to a broader understanding of African history, beyond the narratives imposed by colonial powers. Today, the site is celebrated not only by Zimbabweans, but by Africans worldwide, as a vital symbol of Africa's rich and diverse history. As a focal point of national pride and identity, Great Zimbabwe continues to inspire and inform discussions of African history, cultural legacy, and the ongoing struggles for political and social justice. The architectural achievements of Great Zimbabwe stand as some of the most impressive examples of pre-colonial engineering in Africa and the world. The kingdom's use of dry stone construction techniques, without mortar, to build monumental structures like the Great Enclosure and the Hill Complex demonstrates a level of sophistication and technical mastery that continues to be admired by architects and engineers worldwide. These structures have withstood centuries of weathering, showing the durability of the materials and the engineering skills employed by the kingdom's builders. The Great Enclosure, with its massive circular walls and conical towers, is the most iconic of Great Zimbabwe's architectural achievements. The construction of such a large and intricate structure without the use of mortar is a feat that has puzzled scholars for centuries. The precise fitting of stones into place, each piece perfectly aligned without the need for binding materials, is a testament to the advanced knowledge of geometry and construction that the builders possessed. This dry stone technique, while common in some parts of the world, was particularly remarkable in the context of Great Zimbabwe's landscape, where the stones had to be quarried from distant areas and transported to the site. The resulting structures are not only durable, but also aesthetically striking, with their geometric precision and bold shapes. The Hill Complex, located at the top of a hill, was another impressive example of Great Zimbabwe's architectural ingenuity. It is believed to have served as a royal residence or a ceremonial site, central to the kingdom's political and religious life. The site's elevated position offered a strategic advantage, giving the rulers a commanding view of the surrounding area. The construction of this complex, which included multiple terraces and platforms, further demonstrated the kingdom's understanding of both aesthetics and utility in architecture. The precise planning and execution of the hill complex, along with its connection to the kingdom's religious and political center, reflects the symbolic importance of architecture in shaping the cultural identity of Great Zimbabwe. The influence of Great Zimbabwe's architecture can also be seen in other African civilizations, especially those of the Swahili coast and neighboring regions. The use of dry stone construction, large enclosures, and towers in the architectural designs of these cultures shows a shared cultural heritage with Great Zimbabwe. The trade routes that connected Great Zimbabwe to the Swahili coast likely facilitated the exchange of architectural ideas and techniques. The architectural legacy of Great Zimbabwe, therefore, extends far beyond its own borders, influencing the design of later African buildings and contributing to the broader architectural heritage of the continent. Internationally, the engineering achievements of Great Zimbabwe have been the subject of admiration and study. Scholars and architects from around the world have sought to understand the methods used to construct the kingdom's iconic buildings. The dry stone construction techniques of Great Zimbabwe have been incorporated into studies of sustainable building practices, particularly as interest in eco-friendly and energy-efficient construction grows globally. The ingenuity of Great Zimbabwe's architects continues to resonate with contemporary architects who look to history for inspiration in designing buildings that are both functional and environmentally sustainable. The preservation of Great Zimbabwe's architectural legacy remains a priority for both local and international efforts to safeguard cultural heritage. The site's designation as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1986 helped to ensure its protection and raise awareness of its global significance. Efforts to protect the site from environmental degradation, tourism, and development are ongoing, with archaeological research continuing to uncover new insights into the kingdom's building techniques and cultural practices. The rediscovery of Great Zimbabwe and its historical significance have contributed to the redefinition of African history in the global context. For centuries, Africa's history was often dismissed or misrepresented by colonial powers, who sought to impose their own narratives on the continent's past. The achievements of African civilizations, including Great Zimbabwe, were frequently ignored or attributed to foreign influences, reinforcing the idea that Africa lacked sophisticated societies and cultures. The rise of post-colonial scholarship has sought to correct these distortions and highlight the achievements of African civilizations on their own terms. Great Zimbabwe's monumental ruins, along with the kingdom's economic, political, and cultural achievements, have become central to the broader reimagining of Africa's role in world history. The evidence of the kingdom's complex social structure, its participation in global trade networks, and its architectural feats provide the powerful counter-narrative to the colonialist depiction of Africa as the Dark Continent. By reclaiming the history of Great Zimbabwe and other African civilizations, historians and scholars have helped to establish a more accurate and inclusive understanding of the continent's past. In a global context, Great Zimbabwe's legacy challenges traditional notions of history and civilization. The kingdom's achievements, often overlooked in the Western historical canon, serve as a reminder that Africa has long been a center of innovation, culture, and influence. The site's rediscovery has contributed to a growing appreciation of Africa's cultural diversity and the complex histories of its societies. By highlighting the contributions of African civilizations like Great Zimbabwe, the global historical narrative becomes more balanced and inclusive, acknowledging the diverse roots of human civilization. As African countries continue to assert their cultural identity and reclaim their historical heritage, Great Zimbabwe stands as a powerful symbol of the continent's intellectual, cultural, and political contributions to the world. Its legacy, in both the architectural and cultural spheres, has influenced African artists, scholars, and political leaders who seek to highlight the achievements of their ancestors and promote the value of African culture in the global arena. The influence of Great Zimbabwe extends beyond the field of history and into contemporary political discourse. The kingdom's role as a symbol of African pride and resistance has inspired movements for cultural revival and empowerment throughout Africa and the African diaspora. The emphasis on African heritage, identity, and self-determination, as exemplified by Great Zimbabwe, continues to shape the political and cultural landscape of Africa in the modern world. Great Zimbabwe's monumental stone ruins stand as one of Africa's most remarkable cultural legacies. Over the years, the site has garnered significant attention from scholars, preservationists, and the international community due to its historical and cultural importance. However, despite its recognition as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1986, the site faces ongoing challenges in terms of conservation and preservation, as it is vulnerable to both natural and human-made threats. Preserving Great Zimbabwe for future generations is essential, not only because of its value as a national treasure, but also for its role in understanding Africa's broader historical and cultural landscape. The primary concern in preserving Great Zimbabwe is the natural erosion of the stone structures. The kingdom's famous dry stone constructions, including the Great Enclosure and the Hill Complex, are made from granite, which over time can degrade due to weathering and the elements. The region's hot and dry climate, along with occasional heavy rainfall, accelerates the natural erosion process. This erosion can cause the stones to loosen, leading to structural instability in certain parts of the site. Additionally, the vegetation and plant growth in and around the ruins contribute to the erosion, as roots can infiltrate the walls and weaken the stonework. To address these challenges, the government of Zimbabwe, in collaboration with UNESCO and other international conservation organizations, has implemented a range of measures to protect the site. These efforts include reinforcing the existing structures, limiting access to particularly vulnerable areas, and monitoring the site for signs of deterioration. For example, some areas of the Great Enclosure are off limits to tourists to reduce the physical wear and tear caused by human traffic. Additionally, measures have been taken to control the growth of vegetation and plant life around the site, preventing roots from damaging the walls and causing further erosion. Despite these efforts, funding for the preservation of Great Zimbabwe remains a challenge. Like many other UNESCO World Heritage Sites, the site faces limited financial resources, and as a result, some of the conservation projects have been delayed or scaled back. The Zimbabwean government, which has faced economic difficulties in recent decades, has struggled to secure adequate funding for long-term preservation. This financial constraint makes it difficult to carry out large-scale restoration projects that could help mitigate the effects of erosion and weathering. One of the key challenges in preserving Great Zimbabwe is balancing conservation efforts with tourism. The site attracts thousands of visitors each year, contributing to both the national economy and international recognition of Zimbabwe's cultural heritage. However, tourism brings its own set of problems, including the environmental impact of foot traffic, littering, and the potential for unregulated access to the site. Tourists, in some cases, may inadvertently damage the structures by touching or climbing on the ruins, contributing to further deterioration. To manage tourism and reduce its impact, the Zimbabwean government has implemented guidelines and regulations to protect the site. These measures include providing educational materials for visitors installing barriers to limit access to fragile areas, and establishing visitor quotas during peak seasons. The goal is to strike a balance between promoting cultural heritage and ensuring that the integrity of the site is maintained. In addition to the efforts made by the government and international organizations, local communities play a critical role in the preservation and protection of Great Zimbabwe. The people who live near the ruins have an intimate connection to the site, as it is part of their cultural heritage and identity. Many descendants of the Shona people, the original builders of Great Zimbabwe, continue to live in the surrounding area, and they are deeply invested in ensuring that the site is preserved for future generations. Local communities are involved in a variety of ways to help protect the site. For example, many individuals work as guides, sharing their knowledge of Great Zimbabwe's history and significance with visitors. These guides, who are often descendants of the Shona people, provide a unique cultural perspective on the history of the site and offer insights into the traditional practices and beliefs of the kingdom's inhabitants. By engaging with visitors, local guides help foster a greater appreciation for the cultural heritage of Great Zimbabwe and the importance of preserving it. Additionally, local communities are involved in the management and maintenance of the site. Many villagers serve as caretakers or staff members at the Great Zimbabwe National Monument, helping to monitor the site for any signs of damage or deterioration. These individuals also assist with the upkeep of the surrounding areas, such as cleaning and maintaining pathways, ensuring that visitors have a safe and enjoyable experience while also protecting the integrity of the site. The involvement of local communities in preservation efforts has several benefits. It not only helps protect the site, but also fosters a sense of ownership and pride among the people who live near Great Zimbabwe. By actively participating in the preservation of the site, local communities are able to maintain their cultural connection to the ruins and ensure that the history of their ancestors is passed down to future generations. Moreover, the economic benefits of tourism can provide a source of income for local communities. The revenue generated by tourists visiting Great Zimbabwe can be reinvested into the community, supporting local businesses and providing employment opportunities. This creates a sustainable model for preservation, where both the cultural and economic interests of the local population are aligned with the goal of safeguarding the site. The global importance of Great Zimbabwe cannot be overstated. As one of the most significant ancient civilizations in sub-Saharan Africa, the kingdom's achievements in trade, architecture, and governance continue to shape the understanding of African and world history. Great Zimbabwe's involvement in the Indian Ocean trade network, its architectural feats, and its complex political systems offer valuable insights into the capabilities of African societies long before the arrival of European colonialism. Historically, Great Zimbabwe's central position in the Indian Ocean trade network facilitated the exchange of goods and ideas between Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. The kingdom's trade routes, which connected it to the Swahili coast and beyond, made it a key player in the regional and global economy. Its wealth was built on its control over the gold trade, which was exchanged with traders from Arabia, India, and Persia for luxury goods. This trade not only brought economic prosperity to Great Zimbabwe, but also contributed to its cultural development, as it facilitated the exchange of art, religion, and technology. The architectural accomplishments of Great Zimbabwe continue to inspire admiration worldwide. The drystone construction techniques used to build the Great Enclosure, hill complex, and other monumental structures demonstrate the advanced engineering knowledge of the kingdom's builders. These structures have stood the test of time, enduring centuries of weathering and providing a lasting legacy of African ingenuity. The architectural techniques used at Great Zimbabwe have been studied by modern architects and engineers, who look to the site as a model for sustainable building practices and environmentally conscious construction. Culturally, Great Zimbabwe's legacy has had a lasting impact on the broader African world. The kingdom's art, religious practices, and social systems influenced neighboring civilizations, and its cultural achievements were passed down to later African societies. The Zimbabwe bird, found at the Great Enclosure, has become an iconic symbol of African heritage and is recognized worldwide as a representation of Africa's deep cultural and historical roots. The recognition of Great Zimbabwe as an African achievement has helped to challenge colonial narratives that sought to deny Africa's contributions to world civilization. On the global stage, the rediscovery of Great Zimbabwe has played a crucial role in reshaping the world's understanding of Africa's place in history. The kingdom's ability to flourish independently of foreign influence challenges outdated perceptions that Africa was a continent of primitive societies. Today, the ruins of Great Zimbabwe stand as a testament to the advanced societies that once thrived on the African continent, offering valuable lessons about the richness and diversity of African cultures and histories. The ruins of Great Zimbabwe stand as an irreplaceable source of knowledge, offering scholars, historians, and archaeologists a unique window into one of Africa's most remarkable ancient civilizations. The site's educational value extends far beyond its historical significance, as it also serves as a vital resource for understanding African history, archaeology, art, and architecture. Today, Great Zimbabwe is a hub for research, attracting scholars from across the globe who are dedicated to unraveling the mysteries of the kingdom and its people. One of the key aspects of the educational value of Great Zimbabwe is its role in reshaping African history. For many years, African history was misrepresented or overlooked in mainstream scholarship. European colonialists often ignored or diminished the achievements of African civilizations, leading to a distorted perception of Africa's past. The rediscovery of Great Zimbabwe in the 19th and 20th centuries, coupled with archaeological research, has played a significant role in challenging these misconceptions. By providing concrete evidence of Africa's rich cultural heritage and sophisticated societal structures, Great Zimbabwe has become a cornerstone in the study of African history. Great Zimbabwe's educational significance also lies in the wealth of archaeological data it provides. Excavations have uncovered a wealth of material culture, including pottery, tools, jewelry, and fragments of architectural stonework. These artifacts offer invaluable insights into the daily lives of the kingdom's inhabitants, their social organization, and their economic practices. In particular, the discovery of pottery and beads provides evidence of the kingdom's connection to wider trade networks, as well as the cultural significance of artistic production. By studying these objects, researchers are able to reconstruct the kingdom's complex social and political structure and gain a deeper understanding of how the people of Great Zimbabwe lived. Additionally, the architectural remnants of Great Zimbabwe, including the Great Enclosure, the hill complex, and the other stone structures, continue to captivate archaeologists and architects. The methods used to construct these monumental buildings without mortar have become a subject of fascination for researchers interested in ancient engineering. Great Zimbabwe's dry stone masonry has inspired modern architects, providing examples of sustainable building techniques and eco-friendly construction practices that align with current trends in environmentally conscious architecture. The site offers a unique opportunity to study ancient building techniques that predate modern construction practices, shedding light on how early African societies achieved such extraordinary feats of architecture. In terms of education, Great Zimbabwe also serves as an important teaching tool for understanding archaeology as a discipline. The site's ongoing excavations provide students and researchers with hands-on opportunities to engage in fieldwork, learning archaeological methods and techniques in a real-world setting. The experience of studying Great Zimbabwe offers practical lessons in excavation, analysis, and preservation, as well as in the ethical considerations of working with cultural heritage sites. For students of African studies, archaeology, and history, Great Zimbabwe represents a living classroom where scholars can study the intersection of culture, history, and material evidence. The educational significance of Great Zimbabwe is not limited to scholars. It also extends to the general public. Visitors to the site, including local Zimbabweans, have the opportunity to learn about the kingdom's history and the cultural legacy it represents. The site serves as an important tool for fostering national pride and cultural identity, especially in post-colonial Zimbabwe, where there is a growing effort to reconnect with the country's indigenous past. Educational programs and guided tours provide visitors with valuable insights into the history of Great Zimbabwe, the people who built it, and the kingdom's role in shaping the broader history of Africa. Great Zimbabwe's role in African cultural heritage cannot be overstated. As a monumental and symbolic site, it serves as a focal point for the preservation and celebration of African history and identity. For modern African nations, Great Zimbabwe represents more than just an archaeological site. It is a symbol of Africa's ancient achievements, resilience, and contributions to global civilization. The significance of the ruins extends beyond Zimbabwe itself, as the site has become a powerful emblem of African pride and cultural heritage across the continent. The importance of Great Zimbabwe in African cultural heritage is particularly evident in its role as a source of national identity for Zimbabweans. After gaining independence in 1980, the new government of Zimbabwe sought to reconnect with the country's pre-colonial history and reclaim its cultural heritage. The ruins of Great Zimbabwe, as one of Africa's most significant historical sites, became an important symbol of the nation's independence and self-determination. The Zimbabwe bird, a carved stone sculpture found at the site, was adopted as a national symbol and featured on the country's flag and currency. This emblematic connection to the ancient past helps to solidify Zimbabwe's national identity and affirm its African roots. Beyond its role in Zimbabwe, Great Zimbabwe has also become an important symbol of African identity on the global stage. For many African nations, the ruins represent a proud reminder of the continent's deep cultural and historical legacy. Great Zimbabwe is often cited as an example of Africa's ability to create sophisticated and organized societies long before the arrival of European colonizers. It serves as a counterpoint to the negative stereotypes often associated with Africa's history, challenging the idea that African societies were primitive or incapable of achieving greatness. The recognition of Great Zimbabwe's achievements has helped to reshape the global narrative of African history, showing that Africa was home to powerful civilizations that made significant contributions to world culture. As part of the broader African cultural heritage, Great Zimbabwe is also linked to other notable African civilizations, such as the Kingdom of Aksum, the Mali Empire, and the Kingdom of Kush. These civilizations, like Great Zimbabwe, contributed to the development of African culture and history, and their achievements continue to influence contemporary African societies. The study and preservation of these ancient civilizations are essential for understanding the richness and diversity of African heritage. Great Zimbabwe's legacy is woven into the broader fabric of African history, linking it to the cultural and intellectual traditions of the entire continent. In addition to its symbolic role, Great Zimbabwe's cultural significance extends to its influence on contemporary African art, literature, and cultural expression. The ruins have inspired artists, musicians, and writers who seek to draw upon the historical and spiritual connections to the past. The Zimbabwe bird, for example, has become a powerful motif in African art, symbolizing the kingdom's enduring influence on African culture. Great Zimbabwe's legacy also informs contemporary discussions about African identity, heritage, and the importance of cultural preservation. The global significance of Great Zimbabwe extends beyond Africa's borders, as the site has become an integral part of world cultural heritage. As a UNESCO World Heritage Site, Great Zimbabwe is recognized internationally as a place of exceptional cultural importance. Its designation highlights the importance of preserving cultural landmarks from around the world, ensuring that future generations have access to these invaluable historical sites. Great Zimbabwe attracts tourists from around the world who seek to explore its fascinating history and admire its monumental stone structures. Tourism plays a crucial role in the local economy, providing income for nearby communities and creating employment opportunities for local guides, caretakers, and artisans. As a cultural and historical site, Great Zimbabwe offers visitors the opportunity to learn about Africa's ancient civilizations and to experience firsthand the richness of the continent's cultural heritage. Many tourists visit the site to gain a deeper understanding of African history, which is often underrepresented or misunderstood in mainstream global discourse. However, tourism also brings challenges for preservation. Increased foot traffic, climate change, and potential over-commercialization threaten the integrity of the site. As such, careful management is necessary to balance the economic benefits of tourism with the need to protect the site for future generations. UNESCO and other international organizations work with the Zimbabwean government and local communities to create sustainable tourism strategies that prioritize conservation while allowing visitors to engage with the site's cultural significance. Beyond its economic impact, Great Zimbabwe's recognition as a global cultural heritage site contributes to a broader appreciation for African history and its place in the global narrative of human civilization. The site serves as a reminder that Africa, long seen as a continent defined by colonialism and exploitation, is also home to a rich history of achievement, innovation, and cultural expression. The recognition of Great Zimbabwe helps to shift global perceptions of Africa, emphasizing the continent's contributions to world history and culture. The preservation and promotion of Great Zimbabwe are integral to the ongoing process of decolonization in African scholarship and cultural studies. By celebrating the legacy of Great Zimbabwe and other African civilizations, the world can embrace a more inclusive and accurate understanding of history, one that recognizes the global impact of African societies and their enduring influence on modern culture. Great Zimbabwe, as a dominant force in southern Africa, had connections with other ancient African civilizations, such as the Kingdom of Aksum, which was located in the region that is now Ethiopia and Eritrea. Aksum was one of the most powerful and influential kingdoms of the ancient world, and its impact extended far beyond the Horn of Africa. The relationship between Great Zimbabwe and Aksum is not as well documented as the kingdom's trade relations with the Swahili coast, but scholars have noted that the two civilizations may have interacted indirectly through trade and cultural exchanges. Aksum, known for its impressive stone obelisks, and as one of the first African kingdoms to embrace Christianity, was a major player in global trade, particularly through its strategic location along the Red Sea. Aksum traded goods such as ivory, frankincense, gold, and agricultural products with neighboring regions, including the Roman Empire, India, and Arabia. The trade routes that passed through Aksum connected the kingdom to a vast commercial network that spanned Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. Great Zimbabwe, in turn, was a key player in the gold trade, with its extensive gold mines making it an important contributor to the global economy. The exchange between Great Zimbabwe and Aksum likely occurred through intermediary trade networks, such as the Swahili coast city-states, which acted as key links between the interior of Africa and the broader Indian Ocean world. The Swahili coast was known for its cosmopolitan nature, where African, Arab, and Persian influences converged, facilitating trade and cultural exchanges. While direct evidence of trade between Great Zimbabwe and Aksum is scarce, it is reasonable to assume that both kingdoms were part of the broader trade networks that connected sub-Saharan Africa to the Mediterranean and Asia. The similarities between the two kingdoms are striking, particularly in their use of monumental stone architecture. Aksum's towering obelisks and Great Zimbabwe's dry stone construction share a common feature. They both represented the power and sophistication of their respective civilizations. The architectural prowess of both kingdoms served as a physical manifestation of their political and religious significance, reinforcing the divine authority of their rulers. While the direct interaction between Great Zimbabwe and Aksum remains speculative, it is clear that both civilizations were key players in the broader network of African kingdoms that contributed to the cultural and economic development of the continent. The legacy of Aksum, with its enduring monuments and influence on Christian culture in Africa, continues to be celebrated today, just as the legacy of Great Zimbabwe, stands as a testament to the intellectual and cultural achievements of southern Africa. The Kingdom of Mali, located in West Africa, is another ancient African civilization that may have had indirect connections with Great Zimbabwe. Mali, one of the wealthiest and most powerful kingdoms in Africa's history, was known for its vast gold resources, which were central to its economic success. Under the rule of its famous emperors, such as Mansa Musa, Mali became a major hub in the trans-Saharan trade network, exchanging gold, salt, and other goods with the Mediterranean world and the Middle East. Mali's wealth was built on the gold trade, which was also a cornerstone of Great Zimbabwe's economy. While there is no direct evidence of trade between the two kingdoms, it is likely that they were linked through the broader African trade networks that connected the Sahelian kingdoms of West Africa to the Swahili coast and the Indian Ocean world. Mali's gold, for instance, was traded across the Sahara Desert to North Africa, where it entered the Mediterranean market. It is possible that some of this gold made its way to Great Zimbabwe through trade routes that passed through the Sahel and across the continent. The trade networks that connected Mali to other parts of Africa and the Mediterranean may have also played a role in cultural exchange between the western and eastern regions of the continent. Mali was a center of learning and scholarship, particularly in the city of Timbuktu, which became a major intellectual and cultural hub. The exchange of knowledge, particularly in the fields of astronomy, mathematics, and Islamic scholarship, may have influenced the development of intellectual traditions in other parts of Africa, including Great Zimbabwe. Although the specifics of these interactions remain unclear, it is likely that Mali's role as a cultural and commercial center in West Africa had an indirect influence on Great Zimbabwe. Like Aksum, Mali's influence on Great Zimbabwe can also be seen in the realms of art and religion. While Great Zimbabwe is not known to have embraced Islam to the extent that Mali did, the spread of Islamic culture and art through trade may have influenced the artistic traditions of Great Zimbabwe. The intricate beadwork and pottery found at Great Zimbabwe, for instance, share stylistic elements with North African and Islamic art, suggesting a form of cultural diffusion. Similarly, Mali's use of architecture to symbolize power and religious authority may have had an indirect influence on Great Zimbabwe's monumental structures. While the kingdoms of Great Zimbabwe and Mali were geographically distant, they shared a common interest in trade, gold, and cultural exchange. Both kingdoms represent the diversity and complexity of African civilizations, each with its own unique contributions to the continent's historical and cultural development. Another important kingdom in the history of sub-Saharan Africa is the Kingdom of Congo, located in Central Africa. The Congo Kingdom flourished from the late medieval period into the early modern era, and its influence stretched across present-day Angola, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Gabon. Like Great Zimbabwe, the Kingdom of Congo was a central player in regional trade networks, and its rulers maintained a highly organized political system with both secular and spiritual authority vested in the king. While there is no direct evidence that Great Zimbabwe and the Kingdom of Congo had formal diplomatic or trade relations, both kingdoms were part of a larger network of interconnected African civilizations. The Congo Kingdom was an important center of trade, particularly in ivory, copper, and other precious resources, and its location near the Atlantic coast facilitated contact with European traders. This access to maritime trade routes set the Kingdom of Congo apart from other kingdoms in Africa, giving it a unique position in the transatlantic trade network that emerged in the early modern period. Great Zimbabwe's role in the gold trade and its relationship with the Swahili coast also suggest potential indirect connections with the Kingdom of Congo. Both kingdoms, while located far apart geographically, were integrated into the larger African and global trade systems. The trade routes that passed through the Congo and the Swahili coast may have created opportunities for the exchange of goods and ideas, although the exact nature of these interactions is speculative. Like Great Zimbabwe, the Kingdom of Congo also had a rich artistic and cultural tradition. The Congo people were known for their intricate sculptures, beadwork, and textiles, which were used both for ceremonial purposes and as symbols of status. These artistic traditions, much like those of Great Zimbabwe, reflected the spiritual beliefs and social hierarchies of the kingdom. The similarities in artistic practices between the two civilizations may reflect broader regional influences and shared cultural values. The Kingdom of Congo's eventual contact with Portuguese explorers and missionaries in the late 15th century marked the beginning of significant changes in the kingdom's political and social structure. Similarly, the decline of Great Zimbabwe coincided with the arrival of European colonial powers in southern Africa. The interactions between the Portuguese and the Congo Kingdom, as well as between European traders and the Swahili coast, had a lasting impact on the political dynamics of the region. These interactions ultimately disrupted the established trade networks and contributed to the decline of many African kingdoms, including Great Zimbabwe. While the Kingdom of Congo and Great Zimbabwe were separate entities with distinct political and cultural identities, they were part of a broader network of African kingdoms that interacted through trade, cultural exchange, and shared challenges. Together, they represent the richness of Africa's medieval and early modern civilizations, each contributing to the continent's diverse cultural and historical legacy. In the modern era, Great Zimbabwe has taken on a powerful role in African intellectual thought, philosophy, and cultural reflection. Beyond being an archaeological site, it has become a symbol through which African thinkers explore questions of identity, history, self-determination, and the long-term consequences of colonialism. Great Zimbabwe challenges deeply ingrained assumptions about Africa's past and forces a re-evaluation of how history itself is constructed, remembered, and taught. African philosophers and historians often reference Great Zimbabwe when discussing the concept of historical agency. For centuries, African societies were portrayed as passive recipients of external influence, rather than active creators of civilization. Great Zimbabwe directly contradicts this narrative. Its existence proves that African societies independently developed complex political systems, large-scale architecture, long-distance trade networks, and sophisticated spiritual traditions. As a result, Great Zimbabwe has become a foundational example in African-centered philosophy, emphasizing self-authorship of history rather than imposed narratives. In post-colonial African thought, Great Zimbabwe represents a recovered memory, one that colonial systems attempted to suppress or distort. The fact that early European explorers refused to believe Africans built the stone structures reveals more about colonial ideology than historical reality. Modern African scholars argue that reclaiming Great Zimbabwe is not simply about correcting facts, but about restoring dignity and confidence to African historical consciousness. The ruins symbolize what Africa was capable of before external domination disrupted indigenous development paths. Great Zimbabwe also plays a role in debates about modern governance and leadership in Africa. The kingdom's political structure, centered around the Mambo as both spiritual and political leader, is often analyzed as an example of governance rooted in cultural legitimacy rather than coercive force. Some African political theorists argue that modern African states can learn from pre-colonial systems that emphasized moral authority, communal responsibility, and spiritual accountability, rather than purely bureaucratic or imported political models. In literature and art, Great Zimbabwe appears as a metaphor for lost greatness and potential renewal. African writers and poets frequently reference the ruins as symbols of both past achievement and unfinished futures. The silent stone walls are interpreted as witnesses to history, structures that remember what people have forgotten. In this sense, Great Zimbabwe is not frozen in the past. It actively participates in modern African thought as a reminder of continuity, resilience, and the possibility of cultural rebirth. Beyond Africa, Great Zimbabwe has increasingly become part of global conversations about historical justice, representation, and the ethics of knowledge production. As historians reassess the global past, Great Zimbabwe serves as a case study in how power influences historical interpretation. For decades, the site was deliberately misattributed to foreign builders because acknowledging African authorship conflicted with colonial ideologies of racial superiority. Modern global scholarship now recognizes Great Zimbabwe as an example of epistemic injustice, where knowledge created by non-European societies was dismissed or rewritten to fit colonial worldviews. Correcting this injustice is not only about acknowledging African achievement, but also about changing how history is researched, taught, and shared globally. Great Zimbabwe has thus become a reference point in discussions about decolonizing education and historical scholarship. In museums and academic institutions worldwide, Great Zimbabwe is increasingly presented as part of global history rather than regional curiosity. Its inclusion alongside civilizations such as medieval Europe, Imperial China, and the Islamic Golden Age signals a shift toward a more inclusive understanding of human development. This global recognition helps dismantle the outdated idea that civilization followed a single path originating outside Africa. Great Zimbabwe also contributes to discussions about cultural restitution and heritage ownership. Artifacts taken from the site during colonial periods, including soapstone birds and other objects, remain in foreign collections. Debates surrounding their return highlight broader issues about who owns the past and who has the right to tell its story. For many Zimbabweans, reclaiming these objects is about restoring cultural wholeness and repairing historical wounds. On an international level, Great Zimbabwe encourages dialogue between cultures. It reminds the world that global civilization is the result of multiple centers of innovation interacting over time. Trade routes linking Great Zimbabwe to the Indian Ocean world demonstrate that Africa was not isolated, but deeply connected to global systems long before European expansion. This recognition fosters a more balanced and respectful global historical narrative, one that acknowledges Africa as a foundational contributor to shared human heritage. Despite more than a century of study, Great Zimbabwe still holds many unanswered questions. Ongoing and future research promises to deepen understanding of the kingdom's origins, daily life, political organization, and ultimate decline. Advances in technology are opening new possibilities for exploration without damaging the site, allowing scholars to uncover hidden layers of history with greater precision. Modern archaeological techniques, such as ground-penetrating radar, satellite imaging, and non-invasive soil analysis, are helping researchers map areas of Great Zimbabwe that have never been excavated. These methods may reveal additional structures, residential zones, or ritual spaces that expand understanding of how the city functioned as a living organism rather than a static monument. Such discoveries could reshape interpretations of population size, urban planning, and social hierarchy. Interdisciplinary research is also becoming increasingly important. Archaeologists now work alongside climate scientists, anthropologists, and genetic researchers to better understand environmental changes, migration patterns, and long-term sustainability. Climate studies, for example, may provide clearer evidence of drought cycles that affected agriculture, while botanical analysis can reconstruct ancient land use practices. These approaches move beyond simple explanations of decline and instead reveal the complex interaction between humans and their environment. Another important direction for future research involves deeper engagement with local knowledge systems. Oral histories, spiritual traditions, and indigenous interpretations of the site offer perspectives that academic archaeology alone cannot provide. Increasingly, scholars recognize that meaningful understanding of Great Zimbabwe must involve collaboration with local communities, respecting cultural memory as a valid historical source rather than treating it as folklore. Education will play a crucial role in shaping the future legacy of Great Zimbabwe. As African-centered curricula expand, new generations of students will grow up learning about the site not as an anomaly, but as a natural part of African and world history. This shift ensures that Great Zimbabwe will no longer need to be rediscovered or defended. It will be understood, respected, and integrated into humanity's shared story. Great Zimbabwe's legacy as a monumental archaeological site extends far beyond the borders of Zimbabwe, influencing both the African continent and the global community. In a world that is increasingly engaged in questions of cultural preservation, heritage restitution, and the decolonization of history. The ruins of Great Zimbabwe stand as a powerful symbol of Africa's contributions to human civilization. As an ancient city of remarkable architectural and cultural achievement, Great Zimbabwe's history continues to shape modern conversations around identity, governance, and the representation of African history on the global stage. Great Zimbabwe's profound influence on modern African identity cannot be overstated. The site serves as a living monument to the creativity, resilience, and sophistication of pre-colonial African societies. It provides a much-needed counter-narrative to the legacy of colonialism that portrayed African cultures as primitive or lacking in advanced technologies. For Zimbabweans, Great Zimbabwe has become a central symbol of national pride and self-determination. Since the country's independence in 1980, the site has been used as a source of cultural pride, reclaiming African agency and autonomy in the face of colonial erasure. The image of the Zimbabwe bird, once thought to be a mystical symbol, has now become an emblem of strength and national unity, reflecting the historical significance of the site. In the broader context of African identity, Great Zimbabwe represents more than just a historical site. It signifies a shared cultural heritage, resonating across different African nations. As African scholars, artists, and political leaders continue to draw from the well of pre-colonial history, Great Zimbabwe serves as a beacon of African intellectual and artistic traditions, showing the world that African societies were as capable of monumental achievements as any other civilization in history. It challenges the traditional Eurocentric narratives and emphasizes the importance of looking at Africa's diverse and rich history through its own lens. Internationally, Great Zimbabwe's status as a UNESCO World Heritage Site ensures its place in the global consciousness. It is celebrated for its unique stone architecture, its role in regional trade networks, and its significance as a cultural landmark in world history. Its inclusion in the World Heritage List has elevated the site's importance, urging global audiences to recognize the value of preserving such monumental structures. Great Zimbabwe's recognition contributes to a growing appreciation of African heritage, encouraging people worldwide to understand the depth of Africa's past and its influence on the present. Great Zimbabwe plays a pivotal role in addressing historical injustice, particularly in the context of the colonial period. During the era of European colonization, African history was often distorted or ignored, with colonial powers portraying the continent's societies as unwritten or undeveloped. The mistreatment of African cultural artifacts, the erasure of indigenous knowledge systems, and the imposition of foreign narratives denied Africans the agency to tell their own stories. Great Zimbabwe's recovery and the growing recognition of its significance challenge these colonial narratives by restoring African voices and honoring the contributions of indigenous peoples to world history. For much of the colonial era, Great Zimbabwe was falsely attributed to foreign builders, such as the Phoenicians, due to the racist assumption that indigenous Africans lacked the knowledge or skill to construct such an advanced civilization. The work of archaeologists such as Gertrude Cotton Thompson, who in the early 20th century proved that the ruins were built by the Shona people, was pivotal in reclaiming the site as an African achievement. Her research helped to dispel myths about Africa's capabilities, emphasizing that the great accomplishments of civilizations like Great Zimbabwe were the work of indigenous Africans who created sophisticated systems of governance, trade, and architecture. By challenging colonial narratives, Great Zimbabwe has also contributed to the larger movement of historical restitution. In addition to archaeological work, there is an increasing demand for the repatriation of cultural artifacts taken from African sites during colonial times. Many of the artifacts from Great Zimbabwe, including the famous Zimbabwe birds, remain in foreign museums and collections, and calls for their return are growing. The return of these cultural treasures would symbolize the healing of past injustices and the restoration of Africa's historical and cultural heritage to its rightful owners. Repatriation is an ongoing discussion, and the return of these objects to Zimbabwe would reinforce the importance of acknowledging Africa's rightful place in global heritage. The historical injustice of colonialism is also addressed by the global recognition of Great Zimbabwe. By acknowledging the significance of African civilizations such as Great Zimbabwe, the world is taking steps to correct the historical erasure that has occurred over centuries. This global recognition validates the history of Great Zimbabwe and other African civilizations, offering an opportunity for future generations to learn about Africa's past with a deeper, more accurate understanding. Through education and cultural awareness, Great Zimbabwe helps to build bridges between Africa and the world, allowing for a more inclusive, respectful, and accurate portrayal of history. Looking to the future, the preservation of Great Zimbabwe is a critical issue. As a UNESCO World Heritage Site, the ruins of Great Zimbabwe are protected under international law, but the site still faces significant threats from environmental degradation, tourism, and the pressures of modern development. As climate change continues to affect the region, with increasing temperatures and changing rainfall patterns, the site's fragile stone structures are at risk of further erosion. Conservation efforts must be scaled up to ensure that the site remains intact for future generations. The role of international organizations such as UNESCO, along with local authorities and communities, will be essential in preserving the site. Efforts to prevent erosion, manage tourism, and limit the impact of local development are key to maintaining the integrity of the ruins. The introduction of modern technologies, such as digital preservation techniques and satellite imagery, can also assist in monitoring and protecting the site from further damage. These technologies allow for a more comprehensive understanding of the site structure and provide a platform for real-time interventions if needed. In addition to physical preservation, there's a growing emphasis on digital and virtual engagement with Great Zimbabwe. Digital technologies offer new opportunities to engage people worldwide with the site's history and cultural significance. Virtual tours, interactive exhibits, and 3D reconstructions can allow people from all over the world to experience the site without contributing to its physical degradation. This approach not only enhances global access to the site, but also raises awareness about the importance of cultural preservation. The continued research and study of Great Zimbabwe also promises to yield new insights into its history, particularly regarding its economic, social, and political systems. Ongoing archaeological excavations, combined with advancements in technology, will continue to deepen our understanding of how the kingdom functioned and what led to its decline. This research will be crucial in answering lingering questions about the daily lives of its inhabitants, the kingdom's internal dynamics, and its interactions with neighboring civilizations. Finally, Great Zimbabwe's future impact on global cultural heritage lies in its ability to challenge contemporary issues around cultural representation, identity, and restitution. As Africa continues to assert its presence in global conversations about cultural heritage, Great Zimbabwe stands as a reminder of the continent's rich past, the importance of reclaiming history, and the need for global cooperation in preserving shared human legacies. It encourages a more inclusive and diverse approach to history, one where all civilizations are recognized for their contributions to the world. What a journey we've just taken through the rise and fall of Great Zimbabwe, from its stunning stone structures to its powerful role in trade, culture, and politics. Through today's exploration, we've learned not only about the kingdom itself, but also about the profound lessons it offers for modern society. The moral of the story? Great Zimbabwe teaches us the importance of sustainable growth, the value of cultural heritage, and the resilience of civilizations in the face of external and internal challenges. It's a story of both triumph and caution, showing that even the most powerful empires can fall if they fail to adapt. Today, we've uncovered the true essence of a civilization that once flourished at the heart of Africa. From its forgotten decline to its rising prominence in modern historical thought, Great Zimbabwe remains a timeless testament to Africa's rich heritage. As we reflect on its legacy, Let us remember that history is far more complex and powerful than we are often taught. Thank you for joining me here on History Teller YT. I hope this deep dive into Great Zimbabwe has sparked your curiosity and broadened your perspective. Don't forget to subscribe, as there are plenty more historical stories to uncover. Until next time, stay curious, keep exploring, and come back soon to discover more untold histories that will shape our understanding of the world.